Right. Hello, everyone. My name is Tara Van Cleve. I'm a business development consultant helping Oracle developers, product managers, and developer advocates educate our users about Oracle technology. Thank you for joining us today at Oracle Cloud Coaching Container Engine for Kubernetes. We're very excited to be able to share with you how to spin up highly available clusters in minutes, as well as use cases for simplifying your DevOps lifecycle. If you have any questions during the webcast, please put your questions in the Q&A area and we will answer them live after the presentation. This webcast is being recorded and will make it available shortly after the webcast concludes. Again, thank you for joining Oracle Cloud Coaching Container Engine for Kubernetes. This webcast will be presented by Oracle Cloud engineers Varun Yadav and Sasanka Abesing. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Varun and Sasanka.
Thanks, Tara. Hey everyone, this is Varun Yadav. I'm a cloud engineer, and with me I have Sasanka Abesing as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop in the chat and we'll be answering during the session. This is our safe harbor slide. I'll just leave it for a second. For today's office hour, we have the agenda of introducing to the Oracle Kubernetes Engine, and then I'll jump into the demo showcasing how you can spin up the cluster and talk about more information about how you can use with the CICD and pod logging and security stuff like that. So if you are all familiar with the Kubernetes, so it's an open source platform for managing the your containerized application and orchestration. So what is Oracle Kubernetes Engine? So it's an Oracle managed platform. Basically, it's a tooling to create, scale, and manage standard-based Kubernetes cluster easily and instantly, and solves a few problems like complexity, costly, and time-consuming to build and manage the environment. So using the Kubernetes Engine, you don't have to worry about any of this. You can simply spin up the cluster. And a few of the benefit that it provides is like reduced time to value. So that developers are able to deploy containerized applications quickly, give DevOps team clear visibility and simplified management of Kubernetes environment. And of course, combine production grade container orchestration of Kubernetes with control, security, IAM, and highly predictable performance of Oracle's next generation cloud infrastructure. So if you see on the screen, basically on the left-hand side, if it's a customer managed cluster, the things on the light blue shade is what customer usually manage. So with the Oracle managed cluster using the OKE, customer only needs to worry about how to deploy the application and managing the application. So all the different things like scalability, high availability, upgrades, patch, server provisioning, all these different things are managed by Oracle versus maintaining if it's the customer-owned cluster. So if you talk about the application lifecycle and how it can be deployed in the Oracle Kubernetes Engine using the CICD tools. So if you're using any CICD tools like Jenkins, if it's a Oracle Visual Builder Studio, previously known as DevCS, or any other tool, simply you can containerize the application and push that into the OCIR, or if you're using any other containerized platform for like Docker Hub, you can use that as well. But OCR is the Oracle offering for storing the containers, and use that container or the image with the Oracle Kubernetes Engine and simply expose the REST API with the load balancer. These are the few differentiation between the Oracle and the few other platforms. So Oracle doesn't charge for the management fees. So basically what you pay for is simply using the compute VM that are used by the Kubernetes Engine. And you can use all the different shape, including the bare metal and the VM. Now it supports the flex shape as well. So you can choose how much OCPU and the memory do you want to use in your cluster. These are the few recent improvements that have been made in the Oracle Kubernetes Engine. So Oracle Kubernetes Engine is available on day one in all the new commercial regions. So that includes more than 22 regions. So it's available in more than 22 regions. And if you talk about the security and compliance, so it's a FedRAMP certified. It supports for the pod security policy. And recently, the feature for private cluster has been enabled. So you can create a fully private cluster, including the REST Kubernetes API and the worker node as well. In terms of usability, not only you can use the kubectl from your local terminal, but you can also use it from the Cloud Shell as well. And the current version by default is 1.18, but it supports the 1.19 as well. And you can also do the node auto scaling in the Oracle Kubernetes as well. So this is one of the sample architecture, basically to give you an idea of how we can use the Oracle Kubernetes Engine and what the flow looks like. So the idea is basically to migrate the monolithic application and convert it to microservices and deploy using the Oracle Kubernetes. So if you're on the left-hand side on my screen, this is the monolithic application that let's assume it runs on the on-premise, and it's a Java application, and the data is stored on-premise as well. So basically, we'll just containerize the application, and we'll store the containerized application in the OCIR. And for that, you can simply use the Oracle Visual Builder Studio to do that. And here the data has been migrated to Oracle Autonomous Database. So once the application is containerized and pushed into the infrastructure registry, we can simply deploy that image in the Oracle Kubernetes Engine, and using the Kubernetes broker, we can connect to the database as well. And just to give you an example, if you're using some other tools like Visual Builder, that's our low-code offering, or if you are using the Apex, we can consume that REST endpoint that is being exposed via the Kubernetes. With that, I'll jump into the demo and I'll talk about how we can provision the cluster, and we'll see more features in the console. All right. If you're able to see my screen, basically, I'm sharing the homepage for the console in the Oracle Cloud. And if I click on the hamburger menu, if I scroll down to the developer services and I click on the Kubernetes cluster, this is where I can see the Kubernetes cluster that is been already provisioned. If not, you can simply select the compartment where you want to provision and click on create cluster. So as you can see, I already have one cluster provision over here. It gives me the detail of what version I'm using, when it is provisioned, and different information. Let's click on create cluster. Here you can see I am getting the option for quick create and the custom create. Let's stick with the quick create, and we can see what information we can provide over here. So we can simply give the name that we want to give for the cluster, choose the compartment, and for the Kubernetes version, you can see 1.19 is selected, but if you want 1.18, 1.17, previous versions are supported for now as well. But I'll say like sticking to the latest version is obviously good. And as I was saying, you can create the private endpoint. So you get the option of choosing between the private and the public Kubernetes API endpoint, and same applies for the worker node as well. So do you want to place it in the private subnet or in the public subnet? And for the shape, you can select the shape, all the different shapes that are available over here. So you can see it supports the bare metal VM, standard VM shape as well. And if you want, you can choose the flex shape as well. So here I can simply say, like, if I want, let's say 2 CPU and maybe 20 gig of memory, I can simply select the shape using the flex. And lastly, it asks me about how many nodes do I want to provision at the beginning of the cluster. Obviously, we can always go back and change the number of nodes. So let's just leave it 3 for now. If I click next, it will give me the information just to review. Okay, this is what it is going to provision using the quick create. So you can see all the different side of blocks, and the networking things are already handled by the Kubernetes. But if you want, you can always go ahead and create a custom. You can always choose the custom option for creating cluster, because there you can select the information regarding the networking. So I'll just show you how it will look like. So the same thing, give the cluster name, Kubernetes version. If I click next, here you can see it gives me the option of choosing the VCN and the subnet for my worker nodes and the API endpoint. And if I want to use some security groups, or if I want to assign a public IP address, I can do it from here. So let me just select. Oops. Here I can select my node pool. Basically, I can give the information for creating the node pool. What version do I need for my nodes? I can simply select the image for the VM. So Oracle Linux 7.9, I'll just select that. The shape, again, I can choose from bare metal to flex any of the shape that I need. And you can see I can select the availability domain as well, and the subnet. So all this different information regarding the networking and choosing in the granular level, you can do it from the custom create cluster option. I'll click cancel for now because I already have one cluster running, and I'll show you what are the different information that is seen, that can be seen on the cluster level. So you see here we can get the information like, okay, what's the cluster version, if the port security policy is enforced or not, and the encryption key over here, and all the different networking information down there. And if I scroll a little bit down, I can see the different metrics like API server request, API server response, and schedulable pods. And on the left-hand side, you can see a few other tabs like node pool, image verification, quick start. So for now, I'll click on the node pool to see the information regarding the node pool that I have. And again, here this gives me the information for the node pool. So I already have one node pool over here. I can click on that. And again, it gives me the basic metrics of like node state and the Kubernetes node condition. And if I switch to nodes, it gives me information for the nodes. So currently, as you can see, I only have 2 nodes running over here. It gives me the information for the public IP because I have deployed in the public subnet. And let's say if I want to scale my nodes directly from the console. So at the top, there is a button for scale. I can click on it, and I can simply give the number that I want to have. So if I want to, let's say, scale it to 3 nodes, I can give 3, and I'll just leave all the things as default. And if I click on scale, so basically it will scale on the, it will scale my node to 3. Scale my node pool to 3 nodes, and it will take a few seconds to reflect that information over here. But all the applications that are already running, that won't be affected. So so you don't have to worry about the downtime. So one of the things, let's talk about the security. So as I said in the slide deck, like not all the use cases have like public cluster or the public node. So basically, you can create the private cluster so that it's not exposed to the public internet. And if you want to access that private cluster, so you can use the fast connect if you're connected to the on-premise, and also you can use the bastion host if you want to connect to the private cluster. And in terms of pod security, so you can, if I click on the edit cluster, I can enable the pod security. So pod security helps you can use pod security basically to limit storage choices available to pods, restrict the host, networking, and ports that pod can access, prevent pod from running as a root user, and also prevent pod from running in privilege mode. So all those different kind of restriction you can simply enable on the pods, and you can associate the policy with the when you're deploying the pod, or you can use the cluster role or the cluster role binding to associate with the different group as well. So with that, like, let's say our cluster is already be created, right? And now how can you access the cluster? So there are like two ways to do it. One is via the Cloud Shell, and the another way is via the local machine, right? So if you can see on my cluster, there is already a button for access cluster. If I click on it, here it gives me the option of Cloud Shell access, or if I want, I can choose the local access. Let's say if I want to use the Cloud Shell, I can simply click on the Cloud Shell, launch Cloud Shell from here, and for generating the kubeconfig, I can simply copy this command and paste it in my Cloud Shell. And for the local access, it gives me the step on how to do it. It gives me the command of generating the kubeconfig file and then exporting that environment variable for the kubeconfig. So I'll show you both the ways of how to do it. Excuse me. So if I click on launch Cloud Shell, I already have it running in the background. If not, it will just take few seconds before it shows up, or you can simply click the terminal button on the navigation bar, so it will open up the Cloud Shell. I already have the kubeconfig configured, but if not, you can simply copy this and paste it in your Cloud Shell terminal. So it will create a kubeconfig file for you. So as you can see, there is an existing kubeconfig file found, and the new config has been merged into it. So now let's say if I want to get the information on the few services that I have already deployed. So I can just use the kubectl command to get service. So that will give me all the information of the different services that are already been deployed in my cluster. So you can see that there are a few services that are already running. And the same applies for the local access as well. So I already have a terminal open. So if I do one thing regarding the, oops, my bad. I hope you can see my terminal. Tara, can you confirm that? Shashanka? I assume yes. All right. So if you're using the local machine, basically you need the OCI CLI installed and the kubectl installed. So that's why, Cloud Shell is the another way. Basically, it gives you the quick and easy access directly from the console itself. But if you prefer to use the local way, you need to install the OCI CLI and the kubectl. So I already have it on my local machine installed, and if I run the kubectl get nodes over here, just take a second maybe. Yep, there you go. And it gives me the information. So the another thing that where setting up the local access helps out is when we want to use the Kubernetes dashboard, right? By default, the Kubernetes dashboard is not installed on the cluster, but you can do it manually, and I'll share the link in the chat as well. There's a documentation already provided on how you can do that. But in this case, I already have that running. So if I go back to the console, maybe you can see I already have one of the services where it says, maybe it's in a different namespace where the Kubernetes dashboard has already been installed. So I can simply, in this case, do kubectl proxy. So that will start my Kubernetes dashboard in the localhost 8001. And I'll just copy the link for the dashboard. and open that in the browser. Yep, there you go. So for generating the token, there's already a command for that. It's already available in the documentation, and I have generated my token before the call. So basically, I'll simply paste my token and sign in. So here you can see all the different information, basically from the pods deployment and all the services that are already running in my cluster. So you can see these are all the different deployments that are running. You can see the number of pods and services. If I go to my services, you can see all the different services with the external endpoint. So basically, this is how you can access the Kubernetes cluster using the, as I said, using the Cloud Shell, or if you want, you can use the local machine, and same applies for the Kubernetes dashboard. One thing to notice about the Kubernetes dashboard is like you can use it from the local machine, and you cannot directly use it from the Cloud Shell. Let's talk about the CICD part and how you can use the Kubernetes with the CICD. So if you remember from the slide deck that I was sharing, I was talking about the architecture where I'm using the Visual Builder Studio, and I'm containerizing my Java application, and then I'm putting that container into the Oracle container registry, and then using that image basically to deploy into the Kubernetes. So I already have my Visual Builder Studio instance open over here. I won't go into the much detail about all the different features that are available, but if you take a look on the left-hand panel, so it includes from the Git repository, hosting the source code, to the connecting to the Maven and the NPM registry, and you can use the build jobs and the pipeline to deploy your application. So if I click on the Git, I already have the source code for my Java application over here. So you can see this is my source code, and I already have the YAML file that I'm going to use for deploying the application to the Kubernetes. So if I go to the build, I already have one build created. I'll show you how we can configure the build. So if I click on the configure, the first step is basically to select the Git repository, basically my source code, so that we know, okay, this is the repository that we are going to use. So here I'm selecting the repository called product catalog. And you can see, you can say like, okay, what branch you want to use. And if you want, you can select the advanced option, like what to include and exclude, stuff like that. In the parameters, right now I don't have any parameters, but if you want, you can use the string parameter, password boolean, or any of the parameters. But the main part is the steps. So here, if I click on add step, you can see all the different steps, like modules are pre-available. So common build tools includes the Maven Unix shell. You can simply use that. And if you're using Docker, you can do all the different Docker commands from login, pull, build and push, and all the other different commands available over here as well. And the OCI CLI to connect to the Oracle Cloud. So here I have already set up the OCI CLI because we are using the CLI in one of the steps. I'll show you that. And in the Unix shell, what we are doing is we are kind of generating the password for the the wallet file for the autonomous database, and we are using that wallet file basically to connect to our microservice. So once that configuration is done, we are containerizing our application, and containerizing the application, and then we are pushing that image into the OCIR, that's our Oracle Cloud Registry. So you can see I can simply give the name, like IID stands for H1. So iid.ocir.io is the H1 registry, my username and the password. So here I'm basically building the Docker image. So again, I'm saying, okay, this will be the image name, build number is whatever the latest build of the job is. And after building the image, I'm simply pushing the image into the registry. So once that pushed, the image is pushed in the registry, I'm using the Unix shell again to run the OCI commands. Basically here, you can see I am simply generating the config, and then I'm applying using the kubectl apply command to create a service in the cluster. So if I click on cancel, I already built the job quite a few times. As you can see, this is build number 86. So once it's deployed, the status is green, so it's already deployed. If you want, you can see the logs. It gives you all the different information. We were using the command for kubectl get service, and it gives you, okay, it's been deployed, and all the services you can see in the logs as well. So let me go to the Kubernetes, and from here, let's say we want to check if our service is running or not. So I already have the kubectl get services command running the Cloud Shell. And you can see product service is the one that I have deployed from the CICD. And you can see this is the, external IP. I'm using the load balancer for that. I'll copy the external IP, and it's running on port 8080. So I can simply, I already had it running. So this is the REST endpoint. So I'm getting the product catalog data back as a response in the JSON format. And simply we can use it for the different purpose. One thing about the load balancer is, like, as you can see, this is the public load balancer, right? But if you want, you can use the private load balancer as well. So basically, you just need to mention about the load balancer in the config file. So you can say, like, okay, I want to use the private load balancer, or I want to use the public load balancer. So those options are available directly from the kubeconfig file. So so far we have seen, like, okay, how we can create the cluster, things about the metrics, like different metrics that are shown in the console, board security, and the private cluster, and how we can access the cluster, and how we can use the Kubernetes with the CICD tool. Sorry. So one of the things that I want to cover next is about the application logging. So let's say you have like about 10 applications that are already running in the cluster, and you want to see if there is any error log in any of the application or in the pods, so that it's easy to debug and to see what's going on. So you can do that as well. So we have a service called Oracle Logging. So you can go to the logging and simply go to the logs, where you can set up the logging for the application level. So you can see I already have a log created, and I'll share the documentation on that as well, on how you can set up the logging, because it's very easy. But I already have it set up over here, and you can see it's using the agent configuration. So if I click on that, basically I'm giving the file path. So you can see here, I'm giving the file path for my product service container, and the there's one another service that is already running. So I'm giving these two path basically, so I can get the logs from those two for those two services. So this is how I can configure the agent, and then as I said, I already configured the logs. So this is my custom log. I'll just give it a name, okay, custom log. So basically, if I filter time to past 1 hour, you can see I have used the API before before the start of this call, and I can see the log data. So if I open it up, it gives me all the different information regarding that service. Okay, what's the message, and all the compartment ID and different information from that JSON payload. Or maybe if I do, let's say, past 3 hours, yep. Here you can see the product catalog service that I've invoked. So you can see this is the time I invoked. What's the stream? What's the path for that log? So all those information you can see it over here. So it helps you really to understand about if there is any error, or if there is any warning message, or simply to understand, okay, what's going on with your pods or the services that you have deployed in the cluster. With that, I think we have covered like a lot of topics. If you guys have any question, please feel free to drop in the chat. We can take some Q&A.
Yeah, Varuna was trying to answer in some question. So we got like a couple of questions. So you want to go one by one, or how we are going to answer?
Yeah, so I see one of the question where it says like, okay, where can we find the log file path in the container? Is it available in OK GUI? Yeah, so for the file path, it's not available directly by the OK GUI, but in general, so let's say if you already have set up the SSH on your node VM, so you can SSH into your VM, and from there you can simply see the file path for that particular service that you have deployed in the cluster. That's how you can get the file path, if that helps out. And another question that I see is, can we create a notification on certain metrics? Definitely, you can create the notification as well based on the logs that you are getting. So let me show you. So basically, once this is our log, and I think using the monitoring services, you can set up the different metrics and the alarm based on the metrics that you want to capture, or you want to trigger the notification. If you have any other questions, please feel free to drop as well. Meanwhile, what I can talk about is like, let's say you want to do get the hands-on experience on the Kubernetes. So we have a few workshops on that. So if you go to the console page, and if you scroll down to the start exploring part of it, and if you click on deploy website, you can see there is a tab for installing MuShop on Kubernetes cluster. So let me just open the MuShop on the other tab. So MuShop is kind of like our workshop for getting the hands-on experience with the different Oracle Cloud Native services. So you can see all the different services that have been listed over here using the API Gateway, Kubernetes, Oracle Registry Functions is our serverless offering, and all the different technologies over here. And this is the diagram. Let me just zoom in a bit. This is the architecture diagram of what are all the different technologies and the things that are going on. So you can see we are using the ingress controller over here, and then we are exposing the Node.js application REST API, and it's been consumed. So it's I know it's a little bit complicated, but if you take a look at the documentation over here, you can get a good idea of what all the things are done and what does it do. So it's a very good exercise for getting the hands-on experience on the Oracle Kubernetes Engine and overall Oracle Cloud platform. and we'll drop the link for the workshop in the chat as well. And if you want, you can, if you already have access to the Oracle Cloud account, you can see it in the console page as well. There's one question in the chat. Can the application deployed on the OK be monitored via OCI APM? So application performance monitoring, that's what APM stands for. So I believe we can do that using the APM as well. I think there might be some documentation as well. If we find it, we can put it in the chat as well. There's another question, how we can set up disaster recovery environment for the OKE setup. That's a good question. For the disaster recovery, maybe we can take a look into that as well. And there's one more question for, can OKE nodes in the pool be scaled up or only scaled out? So let me talk about the scaling first. So yeah, you can scale out the node pool as well. So let me go back to my cluster. If I go to my nodes, node pool over here, go to my pool. So if you remember at the beginning of the demo, I scaled up my node pool from 2 to 3. So you see now all the 3 nodes are available over here. So if the same way, let's say I have three node, I can simply change it back to 2. And that's how you can scale out the node pool as well. So there is a feature already available for auto scaling for the node pool as well. So let's say based on the requirement and the resources that are already available, auto scaling can help scaling in and out for the node pool as well. And the same applies for the horizontal scaling for the pods and vertical scaling for the pod as well. There's another question for, how does OK handle patching and upgrades? So that's a good question. So if I go to the main page for the cluster, so right now you can see it's like latest version that we are already using. But let's say if you're using the previous version, you will see over here directly the option for, okay, there is a new version available. So you can directly upgrade your cluster from the GUI. And same applies for the node pool as well. So let's say I already updated my node pool for the latest version, but if it's using the previous version, you can directly do it from here as well. But let's say this was created a long time back, and at that time it was using the previous version. So you can see that there's one node still using the previous version. But if I want to upgrade my node pool to completely to the new version, basically all of my nodes should run on the new version. So what I can do is like simply create a new node pool add a node pool over here and choose the version, so that all the nodes inside that pool will have the latest version. So actually there's a good documentation already there in the docs. I can share that in the chat as well about how to upgrade cluster to the new Kubernetes version.
So Varun, so once you open the node pool, can we discuss about the auto scaling feature as well? We got a couple of questions as well for the vertical and horizontal auto scaling.
Yeah, so I think from the GUI right now, directly there is no option available for the auto scaling, but in the documentation it talks about how we can set up that with the CLI. So let me share the documentation about the scaling in the chat. Let me do that real quick. Maybe Shashanka, Tara, you can share.
Yeah, I already shared with him, but he's asking about we can configure instance configuration, auto scaling policy for OK cluster as well, right? So the question is asking after patching.
Got it. Can we configure? So when we talk about the, I'm not really sure if I understand about the cluster, but basically, yeah, you can add the nodes to the pool if you want to scale the node pool, and it's the same as I said. Like it applies for the pod as well. So like let's say there is already a VM running with 32 gig memory, and if you want, you can specify how much memory can the pod be used can use that. So vertical scaling and the horizontal scaling for the pod is available as well. I think we have 15 minutes left, so we'll talk about we'll do the Q&A in the chat. Shashank can provide some answers in the chat. Meanwhile, for the next steps, I'll talk about the next steps and the slide deck that we have. How we can do it. What are the few available next step? Let me share that. All right. For the next step, we have this. We have the Oracle Cloud Coach clinics. So what does it mean? Is basically Oracle Cloud Coach is the highly skilled Oracle engineers basically assist you to create help you with all the different Oracle Cloud platforms. So we can conduct a workshop if you want to learn about any new Oracle technology. If you want any information, we can do a demo as well. But one thing to keep in mind is basically if it's something urgent, or if you're already using the Oracle products, it doesn't really. It's better to create a service request if it's urgent. But if you're looking for some new information or to learn about the new technologies, you can reach out to us via the Cloud Coach so that we can help you with that. So we can answer all the different questions or about the new technology or the product that you have. Similar to Cloud Coach, we have another program called Virtual Code Innovate. So it's a 2 to 3 day event where Oracle engineer work with your team as a customer, and you bring the use case that you want to see running on the Oracle Cloud. And we work with you during the event, like it's 3 day event. So we work with you on those use cases so that you can see how we can leverage the Oracle Cloud to deploy the application or depending on the use case. And finally, basically you get back to your leadership and showcase the solution to them. So if you want more information, you can reach out to CodeInnovate _US_group at oracle.com. And for the upcoming events, maybe Tara, you can talk about it.
Yes, thank you, Varun. So we do have our next session, and that will be on May 10th. So we hope that this has been valuable and you'll join us again next month. And then if you enjoyed today's topic, we'd like to invite you to join an upcoming live developer webcast on transforming your WLS Java apps to microservices on OCI with vFunction. And that will be taking place actually this Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. So I will go ahead and drop the registration link for that event in our chat right now. There's that invite. And then we'd also love to hear from you if there's a topic you'd like for us to cover in the future. So I will go ahead and put our email in there as well. And if you have any questions about today's session that come up after the fact, we'd love to stay in touch there too. So here is that email. Dropping that in the chat. And then lastly, we'd like to offer you a chance to gain hands-on exposure in a cloud trial environment. And this will actually give you $500 in credit. So I will go ahead and put that promo here. Just a moment. All right. And so I guess we do have a few more minutes for any last minute questions. I don't know if we have any extra right now, but if not, thank you everyone so much for taking your time to spend with us today at this webcast. And we hope you have a great day, and we hope to see you next time as well.